The Falcons defense just got a little sweeter, adding safety Justin Simmons and Matt Judon in the past 24 hours.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. Sirius Black, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And of course, I've been covering the Falcons for a very long time, formerly at falcfans.com, RIP, still going strong on this illustrious podcast. And I thank each and every one of you that go strong with me each and every day. We call you the everydayers because you make us your first listen or first watch each and every day, and to become an everydayer so that you can go strong with the collective whole that is this greatness, that is the illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast. All you got to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So later in today's episode, we will be joined by Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta to get his thoughts on the Matt Judon trade. We'll also have a conversation about Justin Simmons. Now, Jarvis and I recorded that conversation early Thursday before the Justin Simmons news officially broke, but we did get the chance to talk about the possibility of that move. And so keep that in mind when we're talking about it more in a hypothetical sense, but it's not hypothetical anymore, as officially on Thursday afternoon, the Falcons signed former Denver Broncos safety Justin Simmons to a one-year contract worth $8 million with $7.5 million guaranteed, according to NFL Network. Falcons are getting a two-time Pro Bowler, four-time All-Pro, second-team All-Pro. I know some people don't count it when it's second team, but they're getting one of the top safeties in the NFL for the last 5 years. And complacency is seemingly no longer an issue. It's been a busy 24 hours. Actually, I think it's a little more than exactly 21 hours between the Matt Judon trade and the signing of Justin Simmons officially. And those are two big pieces to this Falcons defense. I'm personally upset. The reason why I'm not sitting here, overjoyed, guys, because I would have loved to have given you this content way back in March. But alas, I have to wait till August. I can't get my month straight to give you this content. But as they say, better late than never when it comes to the Falcons defense. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Justin Simmons, in his game, right? Superb ball skills, superb instincts, a playmaker on the back end, so similar to Jesse Bates. 30 interceptions for Justin Simmons since entering the NFL in 2016 is the most of any player. Unfortunately for Justin Simmons, he hasn't been able to turn his individual success into overall team success in Denver, as he has not made the playoffs, and hopefully he will break that streak here in Atlanta. We're all hoping for that because the Falcons, it's been a while since we made the playoffs. But basically, when Earl Thomas sort of took the league by storm, almost 15 years ago, everybody for basically the next decade was looking for the next Earl Thomas. And Justin Simmons is arguably the player that's come closest to Earl Thomas in that period of time. That's how good he has been at various points in Denver. You love the fit in this scheme in Atlanta. We had Cody Alexander of matchquarters.com back on the podcast back at the end of May, I think, talking about Raheem Morris's scheme. And he talked about in that episode how Ejiro Evero, the current Carolina Panthers defensive coordinator, has a very similar scheme, having coached with Raheem in LA. And Simmons played for Ejiro Evero in 2022 with the Denver Broncos when he was the then Broncos defensive coordinator. And that season, Simmons tied for the NFL lead with 6 interceptions. So if that translates, you kind of know what you're getting. We just saw Jesse Bates coming off a 6 interception season. Hopefully, we'll get Cody back on the podcast soon to get a little bit more insights into what this scheme looks like with adding playmakers like Judon and Simmons into the mix. But I'm imagining when we have that conversation with Cody, he's going to talk about, the possibilities of having two instinctual ball hawking corners on the back end, like Simmons, like Bates, that are going to do wonders for this defense. Two guys that are going to be able to take the ball away. And now that you couple that with a team that can now get more reliable pressure with 4 guys with the addition of Judon, that's the makings of a high-end defense. And earlier this summer, we have been talking quite a bit about how this Falcons defense's ceiling is probably like the 18th best defense in the NFL, and their floor is probably the 28th best defense in the NFL. And there's a question on where they would kind of fall in that range. And now I feel like, that's sort of flipped, right? When before the last 24 hours, when people were trying to hype up this defense is capable of much more than, being the 18th best defense, I was calling the cops on these people. I was like, these people need to be drug tested. They should not be out on the streets giving these terrible takes about the Falcons defense. But I'm putting the phone down, right? I'm not calling 911 anymore on these people. I'm not trying to get these people locked up for being high at work and whatnot. With these defensive takes. And, I don't know exactly what the range is for this defense now, but it feels like 18 is the floor now with these two additions of Judon and Simmons. And that ceiling could, potentially be 8 or somewhere in the top 10. I know Jarvis later in today's episode will talk about those expectations for top 10. And it's kind of like, in his eyes, like anything else is unacceptable. I don't know if I've gotten to that point now, just get me in the top 15. That'll be a first in Atlanta in a very long time, if you ask me. But, when we talk about the ways that we judge defense, right, we talks about how the 2023 Falcons were good in 3 out of the 6 areas that we judge defense on, right? Stopping the run, third down defense, red zone efficiency, right? Those were the 3 areas where the Falcons were like top 5 last year in 2023. And a big reason why that defense was so stable and so consistent last year and consistently allowed the Falcons to be in games, basically, keeping offenses off schedule and getting off the field in critical moments. But that defense was also lacking in the 3 areas that are also part of, measuring defense, which is putting pressure on the quarterback, creating turnovers, and limiting explosive plays. And it feels like these 2 moves of Judon and Simmons are now going to really elevate them in those 3 areas that were major question marks, right? And now it's just really a question of, can you now maintain in the 3 areas that you were really good at last year? And for obvious reasons, we're hoping the answer to that question is yes. So I think there's a lot of upside to this defense based off of the moves they made in the last 24 hours. It's an incredible achievement. I've talked a lot of trash about Raheem and Terry's questionable plan for this defense and this team over the last 5 months, but they've done an incredible job over the last week. And I said before that, the Falcons felt like an 8 or 9 win team just a few days ago. And I feel like these 2 moves really elevate their ceiling. Double-digit wins definitely feels way more realistic to me today than it did 48 hours ago. Before 48 hours ago, it felt like you needed the offense to absolutely carry this football team. And I think I said this yesterday on one of the 2 shows we put out, not talking about Matthew Judon trade, but talking about the offense and explosiveness, that, that wasn't a great bet given that the offense may not necessarily hit the ground running. But now with these defensive additions, you really have a chance to start slowing down some of those opposing offenses at the beginning of the season that you're going to face, some of them high caliber ones, so that your offense does have a little bit more margin for error, that if they don't come out firing and clicking and firing on all cylinders, come week 1, come week 2, week 3, you do have a lot more margin for error. And I'm looking at a team like Kansas City right now. Like before, it was like you had no chance of stopping that Kansas City offense. And Kansas City is the measuring stick. We know that they're the Super Bowl favorites. And now you can legitimately say, hey, we got a shot against Kansas City, when I don't think you could have said that before, right? That it felt like Terry and Raheem's plan all offseason was like, let's just be the best team in a bad division, right? It wasn't really trying to be a complete or good team, before, and now it is. Now it feels like this team is actually trying to be a good team. That is not just a team that can win the NFC South because it's the worst division in football, but is a team that could go in other divisions and legitimately challenge for division crowns in quote unquote real divisions elsewhere in the NFL. So that's what I mean, where it's been an incredible sort of turnaround for this football team. And I know a lot of other people say you never had any doubts, and I'm just like, I don't know how you are a Falcon fan if you didn't have doubts, but hey, to each their own. There are some people out there in the world that are much more optimistic despite it all. every reason to be not so much when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. So, maybe we're turning a new page. Maybe we're going to have to be a lot more optimistic on this podcast moving forward because of things like this. But before we get into Jarvis's thoughts, I do want to touch upon a little bit of the financials with Justin Simmons. It was reported early on Thursday that Chris Lindstrom is restructuring his contract, freeing up to $9 million in cap space. The Falcons already had about $3 million cap space. Now that puts them at 12. They needed about 6.5 to acquire Judon in the trade. They're reportedly going to wait on a contract for him, so we'll see how that goes in the future. My guess is with the Simmons deal that they're going to tack on some void years on that contract, so they don't have to absorb the entire $8 million in 2024, this upcoming season. And for those of you not familiar what void years are, it's basically years that you tack on the end of the contract that you can basically spread bonus over, but they don't necessarily count towards the contract, right? So, for example, if part of Justin Simmons' deal is to get a $6 million signing bonus, right, on a standard 1-year deal, you have to take on that $6 million all in this first year. But if you were to tack on 2 void years on top of this 1 year, you could spread that $6 million over 3 years. So instead, you would only take on $2 million this year, right, saving you $4 million against the cap. And then the remaining counts as dead money in the future. So the remaining $4 million. So that is probably what the Falcons did, but we'll probably get more details in the days to come. But without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta, get his thoughts on the move, starting with Matthew Judon. And as a reminder, later the conversation that we have about Jeffrey Simmons was before that move was officially announced. But we'll get into all of that, guys, as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So, guys, it is summertime. Baseball is back. And if you want to get back into the ballpark, you got to check out Gametime, an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. And if you're looking forward to this upcoming fall and you're looking to buy tickets for Falcons games or NBA games, Hawks games, or whatever you're into, Gametime is the place to go. They're taking the guesswork out of buying tickets. The great thing about Gametime, we love their seat views. Right, you get that panoramic view from your seat. So whether you're looking to catch that foul ball as a souvenir in the ballpark, or you're just looking to be able to get that autograph, and slap hands with Jesse Bates or whoever is on the Atlanta Falcons, you can do so with those seat views. So go check it out. Whether you're into baseball, football, sports, concert, comedy, music, theater, whatever event is near your, Gametime is there for you. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So today, as we wrap up this very illustrious week for the Atlanta Falcons, we of course are joined by an illustrious guest. He is Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. We'll be talking a little bit later about the things to watch in the week 2 preseason game. I know there's been a busy day and a busy couple of days in Atlanta, and there is preseason games to gear up. So we'll get Jarvis's thoughts on who he's going to be watching there. We've had one big move this week. Maybe we'll get a second move. Talk Jarvis. Is Jarvis turn the page on hating on safeties getting paid? We'll see if he has some thoughts on the potential possibility of Justin Simmons landing in Atlanta. And of course, we will start out the conversation talking about the big trade that occurred late Wednesday night. The Atlanta Falcons acquiring Matthew Judon, the outside linebacker for the New England Patriots, for a 3rd-round pick in the 2025 season. We found out word early Thursday morning the Falcons were able to sort of free up some cap space to make that trade by restructuring Chris Lindstrom's contract. Sort of the talk is that we won't necessarily see an immediate contract extension for Matthew Judon. Maybe the Falcons will wait a couple of weeks, see how the season starts, how he kicks off before they start entering into those negotiations. But we'll see on that front. But Jarvis, my friend, how you doing today? And are you feeling great about the Falcons pass rush for the first time in let's say I don't even want to put a number on it. It's been a long time.
You know what, man? It's a new world order, baby. When you think about the NWO, when it came onto the scene, it was something new, it was something fresh, it was something different, it was a togetherness, it was a connection that those men had when they came up in the ring, man. Like when you start thinking about this Falcons defense, I feel like it's starting to really come together. When you think about, what Jesse Bates brings to the table and AJ Terrell in the contract year, he's hungry. You got Matthew Judon that you just traded for. He's hungry. He's trying to get a contract as well. You got Grady Jarrett, who has something to prove. Hey, man, I'm still here. I know I'm 30 plus. I still got something to prove. David Onyemata, another nasty one. That he knows that he's 30 plus. He feels like he still has something to prove or put some good tape out there because he understands what it is to be able to have a good defense. So when you think about that, and then you add in the young man who we've been challenging for ever since he walked through that door on the Ebikati, the guy that, hey, he showed some promise last year. He had 6 sacks. He was one of the guys that, he had a pretty decent win rate, but he just wasn't able to get home for whatever reason. So you add in a guy that's instinctual in Matthew Judon, be able to get to the quarterback. I feel like you're starting to build something. You're starting to build a connection amongst these guys, man. And when you start to do that, that's when you start to bring in some newness, some freshness about it, because we haven't had a double-digit sack guy since Vic Beasley. And we know that was an anomaly. That wasn't anything consistent. But before that, talking about consistency, we're talking about John Abraham, man. So when I heard the news of this trade, it was just an elation that came over my body. And I just got so excited. And I'm just like, man, you all don't understand what's about to happen. If everybody remains healthy, we're going to be coming up with a nickname for these guys. I promise you.
Okay. Well, I got one idea for a nickname. Might we call them the Wolfpack? Because it's just too sweet.
Yes, sir.
You got to be of a certain age to understand
Yes.
that reference, but we are of that age. And so shout out to all of you that are also of that age. But we'll see. Yeah, man, it's good. It's good to be here, man.
Yes, man.
I was ready to give up. I'm ready. I've been giving up on this defense this year. I was just like, all right, well, let's see what these young guys have. We'll,
manufacture pressure, and,
at least
blitzes. Jimmy Lake go figure it out
or something like that. That was the only positive spin I could have gone in for the defense this year. It's like, man, what wasting another year, Grady Jarrett's. Now we're wasting David Onyemata's time. And it's like maybe some cream rises to the top or something like that. And we go into next offseason feeling a little bit better about some of these players. But it was just not a great place to be, and it's a place that we've been too many times.
Like a live in doubt, man.
So it's just like it's like, okay, like they got a pass rush, they might get another playmaker on the back end, and it's like all of a sudden, like now we're talking, like this is what we've been wanting, just go out
let
there
Terry
and
cook, man.
Yeah,
let Terry
cook. So we'll see if Terry is still cooking, right? Because we got to get Jarvis's thoughts on, that guy on the back end that might be joining the bunch, and see if Jarvis still wants to go out there and spend money on a safety, to get the Scottie Pippen to the Michael Jordan in the Falcons secondary. And we'll break that down, talking a little bit more about Justin Simmons as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Guys, in the NFL, training camp, preseason, it's all about finding the quality professionals that are going to fit your team. And if you have a small business, you're looking for the same thing, but you don't have to sweat it out in the Georgia heat. All you got to do is head on over to LinkedIn Jobs. We're going to have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just any old job board. They're going to help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, right? But just might be open for that perfect role, much like Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons are, actively looking for a job, but they may be open to that perfect role here in Atlanta. But in any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users are not visiting other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So Jarvis, let's talk a little bit more about a potential other addition. Nothing official. You see a lot of Twitter rumors out there saying, "Hey, the Falcons, are looking to get this guy." Justin Simmons goes out to dinner with AJ Terrell, Grady Jarrett. No Jesse Bates there. If Locked On Falcons knows that Jesse Bates, staying out to 3 o'clock in the morning doing stuff. I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing stuff. If you know, you know. But
Yep.
Jarvis, do you feel like the Falcons are still in the mix to land another big fish in Justin Simmons?
You know what? To be honest with you, man, given the depth of this trade for Matthew Judon, why not? Because it's obvious that these cats are, and Terry Fontenot and company, they are on a mission to not only just be getting into the playoffs, but to do something when they get there. I'm not gonna say the SB. I'm not gonna say that yet. But I feel like these are the actions of teams who feel like they got a shot to do something when you start trading for pass rushers around this time of year in the middle of training camp. And then you're still in conversations for a guy like a Justin Simmons, who is a good player. He's a really good player. He's not as good as Jesse Bates, and I know everybody know how I felt about Jesse Bates, paying that type of bread. But if you are telling me that you're going to be able to bring Justin Simmons in for a deal that makes sense for you and potentially makes sense for him, and combining that with, hey, I want to win. Yeah, go ahead and do that. Make that happen, because when you talk about solidifying your pass rush, it makes everybody on the back end better. And imagine Jesse Bates being better because he has guys are being, have the errant throws. Imagine all of the errant throws you're probably going to have more so than you did last year, because you added a guy like Judon and you paired him with a guy like Eddie Buchetti who can force those pressures and force the quarterback to roll out, and then Judon be sitting over there waiting to sack the quarterback, or he gets the ball off and you got three sitting back there waiting to pick that bad boy off. So I think that, going back to the whole theme of having a nickname for this defense, by the way, I really like the Wolfpack. I think that's kind of what we're gonna go with that. But if you really want to continue down that road that they started to travel on, man, it just makes sense. It just makes sense at this point.
Well, hypothetically, if the Falcons do land Justin Simmons, what do you think is the ceiling for this defense? What do you think adding two players like Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons can do for this unit overall?
It got to be a top 10 defense.
Okay.
And as far as talking about turnovers, because we know Jesse Bates, I know AJ Terrell still dealing with his issues and withdrawal from catching footballs. He can't figure out how to clamp the bad boys in his hand and do something with it. But we know Jesse is able to do that. Justin Simmons is a guy who can get his hands on the ball as well. I'm talking about top 10 in turnovers. I'm talking about top 10 in total defense, right? Because that's the number that matters. Total yardage, that doesn't really matter that much to me. But if you're talking about 17, 18, 19, 20 points a game, man, you should win. Now, the Arthur Smith offense, that's a whole nother movie, because if all I've asked the offense to do is average 25, and you do the math on that. If you're putting up 25 points a game and only giving 19, 20, man, you're going to be right in line with where you want to be potentially in February if you're doing that.
Well, Jarvis, I think that represents a lot of growth for this defense. We haven't really had those types of conversations here in Atlanta. I think this represents I think this represents a lot of growth for you, because just remember, like, we're 18 months removed from you being like, what are we paying safeties for? Now you're sitting here saying, like, let's pay two guys. It's an incredible change that you've undergone over these last 18 months.
You see how I change when you address the pass rush?
Fair enough.
You see what I'm saying,
Mhm.
man? Like get into the mind of a Jarvis. Dang, did I just say third? Refer to myself in third person. Yeah, get into the mind of me. Because pass rush rules the world, baby. It rules the world. It rules the land. When you have that up front, you're free to do certain things from whether it be on the field from a scheme standpoint, or you can kind of get away with a lot of things. You don't have to worry about that corner opposite AJ Terrell that much because you got some guys that's gonna get home. As long as you got somebody that knows what he's doing and knows the defense, you can pretty much get by on Sundays at 1:00. So that's why I've seen the light, because you address the big old elephant in the room. They addressed it. They put it to bed, baby, because they were willing to go to war with Braden Trice as that other edge guy. Now, granted, did I think Braden Trice was going to get you 8-9 sacks, potentially double digit? No, but I did feel like it at least had a plan. And they were probably going to have to manufacture a lot more, pressure than they probably want to with whoever is playing opposite of AJ Terrell, with who's back there with Jesse Bates and Richie Grant or DeMarco Hellams, because, those guys aren't perfect. They have some deficiencies. There's a reason why they were battling out for that spot. So when you address that pass rush, you bring in a guy like Justin Simmons, man, you cooking. Like you opening up the playbook. Jimmy Lake ain't got no excuses. If they bring Simmons in too, dude, if it's not a top 10 defense, you need to be fired, Jack.
Okay. Well, there you guys have it. I'm curious, Jarvis. You bring up Braylon Trice, and you talk about DeMarco Hellams, and how much do you think that if those guys don't get hurt, we're not having these conversations today?
That is a great question, man. I always felt in the back of my mind, this is just me just being gung-ho about loading up on guys to rush the passer. I felt like there was one more move, potentially, whether it be a disgruntled player. A lot of people were clamoring for Hassan Reddick. I didn't think that was necessarily a good fit, because there's a reason why cats like that bounce around from team to team and all that stuff like that. So, for whatever reason, I didn't think that was a good fit. But I always felt like it was a guy that maybe disgruntled, a guy that he may be a little bit up there in age, and the team is moving in a different direction from a roster construction standpoint. So, this was from what I was feeling in my gut and in my soul. I'm not too surprised, but I feel like if we would have gotten some signs early on from Trice, maybe he would have got a sack, or in the preseason game, and really start to confirm or what the Falcons saw in the third round of this year's draft. I don't know if they would have been so pressed. I feel like they would have been able to negotiate from a different standpoint if, Braden Trice and DeMarco Hellams wouldn't have got hurt.
Yeah, because I remember Friday night when we were talking to Tanisha Batiste on the postcast, she asked us about how big a potential loss is the injuries to Braylon Trice and DeMarco Hellams. So I think we both were like, we don't really know, because we don't really know what those guys are going to be this year.
Sure.
And right now it's just kind of too early to tell. But like, I remember saying on my podcast, like, I don't think these are season defining injuries in the sense of what you're losing, but they could be now potentially in terms of season defining injuries, just because of what the Falcons are potentially gaining in two veteran players, two proving guys, potentially in Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons. So it is fascinating to sort of think of the what if scenario. And, no one wishes injuries on anybody, but
Sure.
it is fascinating to sort of wonder, like, are we having these conversations if those guys are healthy and going into their second practice? Instead, we'd be talking more about, hey, what are we looking for from those guys coming into this Ravens game? What do they need to show out there and prove? And So, guys, there you have it. Jarvis Davis and I also talked a little bit about players that we have our eyes on in this upcoming Saturday preseason action against the Baltimore Ravens. Because of the Justin Simmons move, we are going to push that to a later date. That will get posted sometime before the game. I just don't know what time, whether that's Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Friday night, whatever, maybe even Thursday night. I don't know. So, there's still more to come for you to get you geared up for this weekend's preseason action. So make sure you continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen, right? Check out Locked On Sports Atlanta to get more insights from Jarvis Davis and others on not just the Atlanta Falcons, but all of Atlanta sports. And of course, schedules dropping. Check out Locked On Hawks, get Brad Rowland's breakdown of that. Georgia football season is just around the corner. See what's the latest going on with Locked On Bulldogs. See what the latest going on with the Braves season on Locked On Braves, right? And of course, check out Locked On Sports Today if you want to get the hard-hitting news around not only just the NFL, but all of sports. I'm sure I made an appearance or will be making an appearance on that show at some point this week, I'm sure. So, go check out Locked On Sports Today as well. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.